the fumo. Yeah, papa, yeah, buy us. Yeah, the fumo. We are the my way, come say you be bread. I'm afraid moving now, moving easy. As a chance to say you down and be cool. Enjoy ye, we are on body. I say, people, 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 I say, people.
All right, so we're going to jump into a newspaper review this morning, and it's Friday morning. We're trying to get you a lot of information to summarize a rather busy week. We have more on the Ejapa deal for the Citi Business Edition. We have some choice highlights from two important press briefings, one by the civil society, the other by the Minister of Finance. We also have excerpts of an interview we were given on the matter. And it's been a week of infrastructure debates, manifesto launches, and all other issues. Highlights on the show this morning. The name is Bernard Avlet. This is the Citi Breakfast Show. I'm here with Kojo Boateng and Godfred. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Bernard. How are you?
Good morning.
I'm well. Great to have you guys.
As always.
Both of you are in polo, or is it t-shirts?
Yes,
t-shirt.
Yes.
Kojo is wearing a t-shirt, Proud Kumerican.
Streets.
And Godfred is wearing one with RADP.
Yeah.
Don't know what that means.
You don't want to know.
Okay.
These days, you just take the abbreviations.
Okay, cool.
Not like the one I told you about, MD. He felt we were calling him managing director.
Something else at table.
So you don't want to know RADP.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. What do you do?
What to do, man?
What to do, man?
It's a Good Friday, man.
It's a Good Friday.
Proud American, man.
Proud American, we do that, man.
You're from DC, man.
Yeah, man. I'm from
Darling,
Boston.
I don't see what people are doing.
Yeah.
Please give us the headlines and stop this your America, whatever it means.
Front page of the Daily Graphic, Bernard. A Ejapa deal in country's interest. Finance Minister. Aviation Ministry readies for Kotoka International Airport reopening September 1, 2020. Ghana Teacher Prize launched.
The Minister of Finance is on the front page of the Ghanaian Times. A Ejapa deal is clean, Finance Minister insists. Business Regulatory Reform Portal launched in Accra. MP urges fleeing Domfase residents to return home, and man arrested for possessing duplicates of voter ID and NHIS cards. Now, in Asamankese, please gun 2 carjackers at Asamankese.
Front page of the Daily Statesman. No agenda against Volta region. President Akufo-Addo declares electricity tariffs to reduce further. MPP promises in 2020 manifesto. And government to set up Kente Craft Village.
Now, the new weekend crusading guide. No political ethnic agenda against Volta region. President Akufo-Addo allays fears. Now, PIAC has 2 stories on the front page. PIAC laments over delays in completing APFA-funded projects. I doubt missing 1.5 billion Ghana Cedi oil money will ever be found. This is Dr. Steve Mantel, the former chairman of PIAC. And PR in COVID-19 must offer hope and optimism.
Front page of the Daily Guide newspaper. You can't destroy my wife, says Rawlings. Comes with a photo of the former president and his wife. He's giving her a peck. A nice photo. Ejapa benefits great for Ghana. President opens 97 million euro Keta water works. Takrady girls kidnappers trial starts. Mahama pokes Nana at Menchia.
Now, the Chronicle, Dr. Boom's response to working with Rawlings. Rawlings mute over squeezing of Bedzidin's balls, but cuts Kwame Nkrumah to size over controversial book. I'm not a tribalistic president. I have nothing against Voltarians. The president speaking. And the women we take to witches' camp, they say that they sleep on the bare floor without clothes and they have no health care.
Front page of the Herald newspaper. Oforiatta fights AG over Ejapa royalties agreement. Forestry Commission security trainer behind Domfase land grab and military brutalities. Ghana's embassy in America rendered useless by government's $300,000 yearly contract with political campaign lobbyists.
Now, the Ghanaian Observer has the president ethnic agenda story. It says no political ethnic agenda against voter region. President Akufo-Addo, JJ Best tweet over Ahoy book. NDC data vindicates Baumia. And John Mahama's Okada legislation promise has come. This is Pius Hajide.
Front page of the BNFT finally from me, Bernard. COVID-19 throws major spotlight on corporate insolvency, and that's coming from the BOG, Dr. LC Awaji, has been speaking. A Japa deal is a novelty. Ken Ofori-Atta provides additional income at almost no cost, he says. Dr. Adesina re-elected as president of the African Development Bank Group, and 11,657 formal private sector jobs lost due to COVID-19.
Now, the finder, assemblies invest 4.5 billion Ghana cedis in 4,686 infrastructural projects. This is the sector minister speaking. Nothing fishy about Ejapa royalties. Ofori-Atta. Etiwa district farmers petition Cocoa Board to clamp down on illegal mining. Cocoa, Medda completes 28-hectare automated drip irrigation projects, and no ethnic agenda against Volta. President Akufo-Addo speaking.
Well, let's start with Citi Newsroom Online. Jifa Gomashi says Akufo-Addo was misled on military deployment to Volta region. Also, the Japa story is here. Government explains motive for basing royalties in tax haven. That's Japa. And of course, the finance minister also says the deal is the best for Ghana. Meanwhile, Domfas, a resident hesitant to return home despite reduced military presence. Other stories on the website. Government will help CPC become more profitable, according to the president. And NDC's 2020 manifesto will be people-driven, not recycled promises, according to Ukujato Ablakwa. If you go to citybusinessnews.com, KIA expansion and new GCA headquarters projects are on course, according to the aviation minister. Also, help us clear $108 million debt, cocoa processing company, to the president. Meanwhile, don't relax COVID-19 protocols after opening air borders, tourism chamber to government. MyJoyOnline.com, there's no political ethnic agenda against the Volta region. Also, incorporating a Japan and Jersey makes agreement tax efficient. This is Deputy Finance Minister. And I had a vision for Ghana. Rawlings fights off Kwame Ahoy's claims of lacking strategy. And if you go to Star News as well, the same story. I have no agenda against Voltarians. Japan has no hidden beneficiary. State capture claims are painful, according to Ofori-Atta. And tell Ghanaians you won't repeat past mistakes. Asante Hene to Mahama. Then there's one here we read in the news. Tension at Budumburam over killing of an alleged police informant. So that's also a story. BBC is talking about Japan. The Prime Minister Shinzo Abe resigns for health reasons, or he's set to resign for health reasons. And Trump warns that Biden will demolish the American dream in a very interesting night from the Republican convention. Let's start with the newspaper.
Okay,
a Japa.
It's still
the front page.
A Japa deal in country's interest, says the finance minister. Story by Timothy Nyangbe. The government has maintained that the approval of 5 agreements to allow a special purpose vehicle, a Japa Royalties Limited, to leverage Ghana's mineral royalties to secure about $1 billion is in the best interest of the country. The Minister of Finance, Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, said the deal would allow the government to leverage Ghana's mineral royalties to finance large infrastructural projects, especially in mining communities. At a press briefing held at the Ministry of Finance in Accra yesterday, the minister dispelled some public assertions that the deal was shrouded in secrecy and raised conflict of interest issues. He stressed that due procedure was followed in enacting the Minerals Income and Investment Fund Act 978 and the subsequent approval of the 5 agreements that paved the way for Japa Royalties to own the rights to mineral royalties in the country.
Now, he explained that listing the company on a major stock exchange seeks to provide transparency and high international standards of corporate governance. And he said London is one of the major stock markets for listing mining companies. If 60 counties have done it, Ghana can also do it. London, he maintained, is the ideal way to ensure we realize the maximum value for the shares that are being sold. And in explaining the type of transaction this SPV is, he said the mineral royalties transaction is a securitization type transaction where Ghana will receive a lump sum of proceeds and thereafter regular dividends. And he says royalties from 12 operating gold mines and 4 development stage assets will be involved in this particular transaction.
Well, further breakdown of the deal by the finance minister also says that on beneficial ownership, Bernard, there had been concerns raised on that. Mr. Ofori-Atta said the issue of disclosure of beneficial ownership of the Japa Royalties transaction was a non-starter because the government was the owner of the company. On concerns about possible conflict of interest situations in the Japa Royalties deal, Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Charles Edu Boahin, said such a situation would not arise. Now, there is another version of this story, but the Herald has a very interesting take. Uforiata fights AG over a Japa royalties agreement, and I'll give you a few things from there. The story is on page 3 of the paper today. Government has shut down suggestions that the Japa royalties agreement is a rip-off to the nation, with Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta at a press conference yesterday denying claims that the government established the Japa Gold Mineral Royalty Limited to mortgage the country's future resources to enrich the current administration. His hard stance is in defiance of the grave concerns raised by the Attorney General's advice against the transaction, describing it as unconscionable and unclear, adding Ghana's judiciary cannot adjudicate on the agreement in the event of a breach, insisting the agreement also appears to be cast in stone. And a few quotes, Bernard, if you allow me. It says that this agreement freezes anything legal, including judicial orders and decisions. In effect, no court can pronounce on any part of the agreement as being illegal, unconscionable, null and void, or on any matter before the court which may or like to affect any part, which is likely, which may or be likely to affect any part of the agreement. This will amount to executive interference of the parts of the judiciary, which is a violation of the concept of separation of powers as provided under the Constitution of Ghana. Therefore, the executive arm of government cannot enter into agreements that curtails the independence of both the legislature and judiciary.
There are questions that have been asked of what the funds will be used for. Now, the Ghanaian Times captured a bit of that in 2 paragraphs. It says funds from the transaction will be used in 4 key development areas, namely education, health, housing, and infrastructure. And part of the Japa proceeds would also be used as seed capital for housing projects at affordable prices for people in the mining areas and support the drive to plug existing infrastructure gaps across the country.
Let me just give you 2 final angles to this. There's an article we published on citinewsroom.com written by 2 gentlemen, Kofi and Sanfordin, CEO of Minerals Commission, and Fuichi Kata, a lawyer with over 40 years experience in the mineral area. They raised a number of questions, and some of the questions include they basically want to know how government did the numbers. So they are interested more in the financial payback. They are saying that the royalty rate payable by each mining company is known. Question: what gold price projections the government's advisors use to determine the valuation? What projections of the quantities mines included in the list would produce, and over what period was used in arriving at the $1 billion valuation? Then they're saying that if the purpose of the transaction is to stabilize government income, how does converting a direct right to receive a royalty from mining companies into a right to receive dividends, if and when declared from a company to whom the miners pay the royalty, how does this achieve this? Let me just do one final story on this. The Deputy Minister of Finance is also explaining why Japa moved to a tax haven. And the explanation is simply for tax efficiency purposes. That story is also on citinewsroom.com.
Very interesting. Hopefully we'll get to the we'll get some.
There's more on
clarity
this on the business edition. We have some various summaries of the positions for you.
Let's go to Dom Fase because the MP is speaking and she's urging all residents to return home. Now, the Member of Parliament for Domia Brobum, under which Dom Fase falls, Sophia Karen Edem Akwaku, has urged residents who have fled the town to return to their home. She has assured the residents that she would act swiftly to resolve this dispute and that the soldiers had left the town. Now, on Tuesday, soldiers besieged the town following an attack on 2 soldiers, and people in the town, residents, fled because the soldiers had come. Now the MP says they can return home. And
okay, so the president has been in the Volta region speaking about the perceptions of bias against people from the region. Citi Newsroom covers the story that the president says the Volta region was not singled out for any special military operation in the run-up to the conduct of the voter registration exercise. According to him, the deployment of the military along the country's borders was a nationwide exercise and was done across all our borders and not in the Volta region alone. He was speaking at Keta Thursday, 27 August at a Deba held in his honor by the Awomefia of the Anglo State, Togbui Suri III. He said there were currently 1,000 military personnel deployed along the country's borders, of which 163 are deployed along the Volta regional part. Now, on that same story, the candidate for Ketu South, Madam Jifa Gomashi, has been speaking on this issue. Now, the story says the NDC parliamentary candidate for Ketu South, Jifa Gomashi, believes the president was misled on the issue of military deployment to the country's borders and some communities in the Volta region during the registration exercise. Now, the Ketu South MP or aspirant who is also the queen mother of the Aflao traditional area, or a queen mother, reacting to the president's recent remarks, said the president's comments contradict that of his appointees. I think His Excellency President Akufo-Addo is being misled again, because even if the military deployment wasn't just the Volta region or Ketu South, it started with the region, and his own colleagues and appointees spoke in the media confirming the fact that military was deployed there for specific reasons. And according to the deployment was troubling because of the contradictory remarks made by the president and his appointees. All right, guys, let's go to other stories.
Okay.
I have a lot of cocoa stories.
Okay.
If you go to Citi Business News, CPC is asking for help, and President Akufo-Addo is responding to the request. So help us clear $108 million debt. In fact, there's a CPC story also in the graphic or cocoa story. Yeah. But Bobio says reporting that President Akufo-Addo has assured the cocoa processing company of his commitment to help in turning the fortunes of the company around. The company, which processes raw cocoa beans into semi-finished products like cocoa liquor, cocoa butter, as well as finished products like golden tree chocolate bars and pebbles, is believed to be indebted to the tune of about $108 million. MD of the company, Nana Ejini Boateng, called on the president, who paid a courtesy call on management and employees of the company to intervene and help them with a repayment plan, especially to Cocoa Board, that allows them room to grow. Now, while commending the leadership of the CPC for efforts being made to make the company profitable, the president assured that he would do everything possible to help the company.
Now, on page 20, Cocoa Board has received some automated irrigation systems to help boost cocoa production in the country.
And Tiwa district farmers have petitioned Cocoa Board to deal with illegal mining. So a group of cocoa farmers and opinion leaders from the Tiwa district of the Eastern region have petitioned the Chief Executive Officer of Ghana Cocoa Board, Joseph Boyne Edu, to support the communities in the district to fight illegal mining. The petition said illegal mining operations remain prevalent in the district and the region as a whole, and the activities of the miners are rapidly destroying the environment and threatening the livelihoods of cocoa farmers. So these petitioners came from the district all the way to Accra to present their petition to Cocoa Board and asked that if Cocoa Board did not take any action, Eastern region will drop in the rankings when it comes to cocoa production, and that will affect their livelihoods.
Well, let me take you to the front page of the BNFT, Bernard. Let's talk jobs. 11,657 former private sector jobs lost due to COVID-19. This is coming from the Employment Ministry.
Wow.
A survey commissioned by the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations has revealed that 11,657 jobs have been lost due to the effects of the coronavirus pandemic on the operation of enterprises. According to the survey, which covered 878 formal private sector establishments, the figure represented 31% of the total jobs created by the targeted establishments for the survey. The survey was done to give the government an understanding of the state of coronavirus-induced job losses and fashion out programs to mitigate the plight of persons who have been affected. Now, in terms of pay cuts, large and medium-scale establishments had to adopt pay cut strategies to keep some workers on their payroll. Generally, the 878 non-household establishments surveyed recorded 31% job losses. In terms of pay cuts, 40% of the workers interviewed suffered between less than 10% and more than 50% pay cuts to keep their jobs.
Okay, now let's go to the local government ministry again. More stories from the sector. Assemblies invest 4.5 billion Ghana cedis in 4,600 projects. This is according to the minister. Now, we've been talking about funds given to the assemblies and what they are using them for. Now, 2.9 billion Ghana cedis was allocated to the assemblies from the District Assemblies Common Fund. Now, 1.4 billion was from internally generated sources, and 300 million cedis from District Development Facility and 200 million from Urban Development Grant. Now, Bernard, this is where it gets interesting. 50% of the projects were in education and water. 50% of the projects were in education and water. And 100% and 300% increment in IGF is also interesting. Haja Mahama says that the digitization of the assemblies had propelled many assemblies to record between 100 and 300% increment in their IGFs. And she explained that the ministry had harmonized deductions of the District Assemblies Common Fund at source, which increased the net transfers to the MD.
Before we get to the Rawlings book with Oriel's reaction to the Ahoy book, there's an interesting story on Okada on the Ghana Report, basically saying the big Okada debate, and it's an interesting article on some victims of Okada accidents, and I think it's an interesting read on the Ghana Report. Now, there are quite a number of front pages on the Rawlings response to Ahoy. Chronicle leads with that. Daily Guide has that.
Yeah, you can't destroy my wife, says Rawlings story on page 3 of the Daily Guide. Former President Jerry John Rawlings has vehemently defended his wife Nana Kunedu Ajiman Rawlings, stressing that the NDC has no history without the former First Lady. The former First Lady, around 2011 towards 2012, left the NDC to form the National Democratic Party after the party humiliated her in Sunyani during the Fonka Games. She had attempted to replace the then sitting President John Evans Atta Mills as the NDC flag bearer during the NDC presidential primary, so she could lead the party in the 2012 general election and make Professor Mills a one-term president. But this all came out in the book written by Professor Kwame Ahoy. But former President Rawlings, in his latest response, said the NDC owes its identity to his wife and that it can never distort that piece of history. Quote, the role, hard work, strategy and organizational talent that Nana Kunedu applied to build and propel the NDC to countless victories can never be eroded.
Meanwhile, the Chronicle also says that Rawlings has responded to everything apart from one part.
Yes.
Abu Bontoshe. He didn't deal with that issue. Chronicle.
So the Chronicle story says he didn't touch on the Bidzidin balls matter, but then they are highlighting a couple of things. For example, the statement says that when Mills returned from South Africa, Kwame Ahoy held secret meetings with Mills to brainwash him against Rawlings, which broke the trust between Rawlings and Mills. Now, meanwhile, the statement indicated Mr. Rawlings' consistent open criticism of Mills' administration on some matters which the release said were still outstanding. This included the failure of the Mills government to investigate the assassination of the Yana and 40 of his elders, President Mills' inability to look into the death of Alhaji Issa Mobila, the late Northern Regional Chairman of the CPP, and some other activities.
Now, Aviation Ministry readies for KIA reopening on September. The first story in the graphic, Maclean Kofi rather, that the Ministry of Aviation and its agencies are putting in place robust measures to ensure the safe reopening of the Kotoka International Airport by Tuesday, September the 1st. That's just the Tuesday we're coming to see. Now, the preparations include installation of 7 temperature thermal scanners and about 70 sample taking booths, floor markings to ensure social distancing, counseling units and standby ambulances at Terminal 3 of the airport. Now, the protocols put in place are to ensure adequate physical distancing, the wearing of nose masks or coverings, enhanced sanitation and disinfection, health screening, contact tracing, and the use of passenger health declaration forms. The measures are in compliance with the ICAO's takeoff guidance for safe operations amid the coronavirus disease. So, hopefully Tuesday, airport reopens.
Nigeria.
We don't know whether other countries, Nigeria
was supposed to open tomorrow, but they've shifted it to the 6th of September.
So if you open your airport and others don't open theirs, it's still business won't happen.
Yes. There's a story I missed when we were doing the Japan story.
Okay.
This is from Dr. Steve Mantiel.
Good.
He says that he doubts that the missing 1.5 billion oil money will ever be found. And according to him, if the government has still not been able to account for the 1.5 billion cedi of the country's oil funds, then it cannot be trusted to monetize Ghana's mineral royalties, as has been done through the Japan royalties deal. And he says that they've been pushing for an account on the funds, but they've not gotten that. And the latest he's gotten from his colleagues at PIAC is that the government will account for it in the 2021 budget.
Let me give you 2 very important international headlines, Bernard. Toppled Mali president freed by coup leaders. That's on page 5 of the Daily Graphic. Mali's coup leaders have announced that ousted President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta has been released from detention and is in his home. He was arrested during last Tuesday's military takeovers. Second story, France urged to intervene in Ouattara's 3rd term bid. French President Emmanuel Macron has been urged to intervene on Côte d'Ivoire President Alassane Ouattara's bid for a 3rd term in October's election, which his opponents say is unconstitutional.
Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is set to resign for health reasons. Officials of his party say this is a BBC story. He suffered from disease called ulcerative colitis for many years, but his condition is thought to have worsened recently. Public broadcaster NHK has said Mr. Abe, 65, wanted to avoid causing problems for his government. He became Japan's longest continuously serving prime minister after taking office in 2012.
NHK, we learned things from the strangest of places. I learned the full meaning of NHK from watching Oshin.
Yes, Nippon.
Osokai.
Yeah. And actually, Nippon is the Japanese word for their own country. Interesting. So that's all we have time for. Coming up next is the Citi Business News. Stay with us on Citi FM.
This is the Citi